I think branding is important. I think it's important to find your ideal customer.
My channel is Dairy of Small Business, where I cover the journeys of small businesses in the DC metro area. And we'll talk about your journey, how you started, how what are the challenges, how what you're learning, and what it looks in the next 5 years.
Sure, sounds good.
Sure. So please go ahead and introduce yourselves, Chris.
Sure. Well, I'm Chris Spear, and if we're talking about business today, I have a personal chef business here based in Frederick, Maryland called Perfect Little Bites. I also have a podcast called Chefs Without Restaurants and a community where I help people build and grow their own small food businesses.
And how long you been doing this?
I started the personal chef business in 2010, and last week it's 8 years that I've been doing it full time now.
Amazing. So what made you do that jump?
Well, it's something that I kind of always wanted to have my own business. I went to culinary school, but you realize having a restaurant is not necessarily the right choice. In fact, it's usually not the right choice at all. They're tough. And I didn't have the money for that. So I worked for other people, but I always kind of thought, what would I do if I had my own business? I was working for a catering company outside of Philadelphia. At this point, it's close to 20 years ago. And they would get requests all the time for doing a small dinner party, two-person, anniversary dinner, dinner for six. And it's not really worth your time if you're a big catering company that, does parties for 200 people, but they kept getting requests and they asked me if I would want to go do it sometime. They said, we don't want this to be a thing that we're going to do, but you work for us, you could use our kitchen, we'll help you get products in. Um, and you can keep the profits as long as you're representing our business using our business name, which can hopefully get us some more leads for maybe bigger parties. And I started doing it, and I didn't do it that long. It was just a couple months, but I thought, oh, that was really cool. It's like I could have my own catering company but on a much smaller scale. And then we moved to Frederick in 2007. And I thought, wow, this is great. Like Frederick seems to have a pretty good food scene. People around here, I think, know good food. But you're also close to DC, Northern Virginia, Baltimore. And I just started thinking, I think this is the time and the place to start that small catering business. And I don't even know that people were using the term personal chef at the time. So yeah, I just started figuring out how that would work, and it's been an evolution since like 2009. I took a course on how to do this, and just start implementing things and pivot as you go.
Makes sense. Yeah, it's tough in the beginning, where how to, you have a lot of things to like, should I go? Should I not go? Should I pivot? Like a lot of things going through our heads when we are trying to do the transition, right?
Yeah, and I tell people this is a job that you can do easily on the side. I mean, it's great side money. There's a lot of people who work full-time jobs. Maybe they're in corporate food service like I was, where you get weekends off. I had some weekends off, and you could just pick up, one job a month and, go do a $10 in a night. It's pretty good. So I tell people you don't have to throw caution into the wind.
So generally, right, like who are your ideal customer? Like, is there any specific like people you target?
I say people like higher end dining experience. People are maybe more used to going out for some of the interesting cuisines and different things. I say, like, if you're looking to do the $30 a head Olive Garden type dinner foods, I'm not your guy. Because my dinners start and have started for a decade at $100 plus, and I have clients who pay 250 a head for dinner. That's right there exclusionary to a lot of people. What I've been really focusing on recently is working with vacation rentals like Airbnbs and Verbos and things like that. So I've been kind of targeting that because those are people who have recurring clients that I could hopefully service. If I come cook for you a dinner for, you at your house this week, I might not see you for 6 months. A lot of customers like who are regular people, they think of me for birthdays, anniversaries, things of that nature. It's not recurring revenue. But
Mhm.
once I started working with, Airbnbs, these are houses that are booked 365 days a year. They're turning over with three or four parties, at least every week. And if I could capture just a percentage of that and then scale it out towards how many Airbnbs can I work with, and that can fill up your calendar pretty quickly.
Oh, that's a good kind of things to target, like VRBO or Airbnb, so that you could get a lot of recurrent revenue. So how many meals or how many parties, not parties, but like how many
Yeah,
Um,
like dinners. Like how many days a
yeah,
week am I working? Is that what? Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
It might be one, and it might be four. Four is a lot, especially because it's very weekend heavy. So it's not uncommon to have a Friday and Saturday, and then on top of that, if you're going to throw a Sunday or even a Wednesday, that gets to be a lot. And that's why I'm really trying to focus on the bigger parties, the higher ticket, and not have to kill myself. There was a time where I was doing dinners for, $75 a head and I'd do a dinner for two. So I'd drive from Frederick to Alexandria to make 150 bucks before cost. And you're like, oh, I spent a lot of time and I made like $80 at the end of the day. And it was just for two people. Um, Pivoting to, trying to get a dinner party for 12 at 150, $175. If I can get those, I'm not having to go out and work as many days a week. So really trying to focus on those higher ticket clients and bigger parties, doing more heads because it's almost the same whether I'm doing two or 10 people. If you're making soup, I do have a party this week and I'm doing an anniversary for two and I'm making French onion soup. It's just as easy to make French onion soup for 10 as it is for two. But instead of getting $1,000, I'm getting $200, or something like
Mhm.
that.
Yeah, I think totally makes sense, right? Like, if you're to me, like if you're cooking rice for two people, if you making it for 10, it's pretty easy, right? Just like start,
100%. Yes.
right? So what are the challenges you've been seeing from the day you started, maybe till now, like, highlights, probably.
I mean, the biggest one is the customer acquisition part because I don't have a brick and mortar. If you're a restaurant, even a mediocre restaurant, if you're on Market Street here in Frederick or anywhere, if you have a location that people drive by, there's a good chance that people are going to come in, even if they've never heard of you. I'm in an industry that people don't even know exists. You and I met at the Chamber of Commerce, right? I've been in the chamber for 10 years. There are still people that I introduce myself to and they say, "Oh, I didn't even know that was a thing. You'll come to my house and cook dinner just for me and my wife for our anniversary." I'm still 14 years in explaining that what I do is even a thing. Not that I'm the best at it, not what I can offer. People don't even know. So if people aren't even going on the internet and looking for that, how do you connect with people? So it's been really just networking, a lot of social media, like getting the word out that not only am I a skilled chef, do I know what I'm doing? It's going to be a good time, but this is even a thing you can do. So that's the biggest one by and far. Like once I get people to find me, it's not as hard to kind of convert them over. But then there's the next piece of like finding the right client. Like how do you position yourself? And a lot of that is through messaging and branding, and a lot through your social media, your website, and all of that. So when people find my website, they know whether I'm for them or not. You know what I mean?
Sure. And I'll be honest, I also felt when we chatted on that day, I was like, oh, is it a thing?
Yeah,
So,
great. Yeah, I mean, not great. I mean, I want everyone to know it's a thing, but like, yes, to my point, people still don't even realize that you can hire me to come cook a dinner for two at your house.
right. So I know you t touched upon marketing, right? I know you also have this podcast, Chefs Without Restaurants, right? So talk about like that evolution,
So it started as a community because I've told people, once you get good at something, other people want to know how you did it, right? So now I've been the chef for a while. Hey, let me buy you a beer. Let me buy you a coffee. Can I pick your brain? Basically consulting for free is what I call it.
right?
And a lot of people want to know how to build and grow a personal chef business. And if you're someone I know, I don't mind helping, but it's not a great use of your time. Time is your number one asset, right, in business.
Right,
So I was like, well, with the internet and everything, this should live online. Let's start a Facebook group. So it's not just me. If you have a question about how to not only deal with personal chef, but like start a food truck or do a catering, let's have a community full of people and we can kind of crowdsource the info. And it was a way for me to say, hey, you don't need to pay for all these courses. You don't need to pay for all these communities. It'll be free and live online. And I started that in 2016, 2017, I think. And the community took off right away. And in 2019, someone who has a food truck here in Frederick, he was helping me with the dinner. He said, "Why aren't we doing a podcast?" And he said, "We." And I was like, what are you talking about? A podcast? I don't know anything about this. I'm a chef." He said, people are doing it. It's not that hard. So we looked online and figured some things out, and we started a very mediocre podcast in 2019. Um, but just because we didn't know what we were doing. I mean, I had no knowledge and we didn't hire anyone. So we were doing all the audio recording, the video recording, everything. I was doing post production, and it was basically the stereotypical like two dudes in a bar BSing for a couple hours. Um, and then COVID came, which, was like 4 months later, and the shutdown and everything. And we were doing the podcast in person. My co host said he couldn't do it anymore. He just didn't have the time or the resources. And like we're doing here with Zoom now, that was an emerging thing. I said, well, okay, well, I'm unemployed now as a personal chef. People weren't having me come in their house. So I'm just gonna find all the people in the world that I've ever wanted to talk to and see if they want to get on the computer and talk to me that way. And I had an extra sum of time because I wasn't really working, going into people's homes, obviously not a great thing in the beginning days of COVID. So I started teaching myself audio engineering and some video engineering and stuff like that, and started to build a better podcast. And last week was episode number 250 and my 5 year anniversary. So
Congratulations.
thank you.
I know you put a lot of effort into like 254 videos. and,
It's
and
it's a lot. It's a lot to make a good podcast. Like the barrier to entry is so low. The technology is great,
right.
but a lot of people say like, "Oh, I like to keep it real. I don't edit." Why don't you edit? Like, I don't know.
Yeah, don't
People
waste
people are
people's
not going to stick
time, right?
people are not going to stick around for a poorly produced podcast. That's just facts.
Right. So how has YouTube helped you in your business?
I mean, it's the exposure, right? The way the algorithms work. It's a ginormous search engine. So if you can figure out, and I'm still working on, it's a evolving process, the search engine optimization, like what are the keywords, how do people find you, analyzing metrics, looking at, oh, people found this because they were searching for that. Oh, is there an opportunity there? Like if everyone's finding me because they're searching for this thing and I'm not even putting that in my descriptions, should I be making videos specifically for that? If they're looking for, Indian catering near me, and then they find me, even though that's not what I do. Maybe I should make a video where I make Indian food or something. Like I don't know, but really getting good at like data analyzation.
So how did you learn all this?
Self-taught, just watch a YouTube video about learning how to do YouTube. I'm big into AI and chat GPT, and I know that's a hot topic. Some people think it's going to change the world in a good way, and some people think it's the end of the world in a bad way. And I think if you figure out how to use it properly, it can be a great tool. And if nothing else, it's a great administrative aid. It's a great, you know, um, almost like someone to bounce ideas off of. And I say someone, and I realize it's not a someone. But just, like you write a rough draft of something and you pass it to them and say, I want it to sound nicer or more professional or whatever. It can give you, a revision, and then you can work on that and go back and forth. So using it to help with things like episode titles of podcasts or descriptions of your cooking videos and things like that. It can, what are the terms that are searched for when people go on YouTube in the cooking and personal chef space? So doing a lot of that stuff, but just self-taught, watching videos, reading books, listening to podcasts.
So how do you use, like what kind of tools you use or systems to manage your, business operations?
I mean, I'm old school in a lot of ways. I have a lot of things I want to reduce friction, right? So, like when customers reach out to me, so it's having a website that explains as much as possible. If I keep getting the same questions, I need to make sure people see these things before they reach out to me. Like personal chef means a lot of things. To some people, it's like me who goes and do dinner parties in people's homes. To some people, it's like weekly meal prep. Some people do drop offs. Some are like private chefs who work exclusively for one person. I don't do meal prep, but I keep getting requests for it. So I made a bold thing that says, I only do dinner parties. I do not do meal prep or drop offs. And it's on my like frequently asked questions. And it's actually on the form when you submit a request to me. So if you get to that page and before you hit submit, it says there in bold, I don't do meal prep. Hopefully that person's not going to send me an email. And then that reduces the time of like, I don't have to respond to this person. They're going to free up their time to find the right person. So just what are people reaching out to you for? So build out your website and your social media so people understand what it is you do. And then anything that they can do, like I have a questionnaire before I come cook for you. I need you to fill that out. It used to be you'd contact me, I'd email it to you. It's a Word document. You'd have to save it, you'd have to type it, you'd have to upload it back to me. Now it's just a form on my website. And you go to my website and the questionnaire is there. And as you're going through the sales funnel or whatever you want to call it,
Mhm.
before you connect to me, if you want a dinner, it's right there. So sometimes people fill that out and it's taking away 3 or 4 steps of back and forth. It makes a better experience for the customer, saves me a lot of time. So building systems like that can kind of eliminate steps, I think is really important.
That makes sense. Yeah, I know. Even I saw that like the board, like, okay, I'm not your meal prep guy.
Yeah. And
What's the most unexpected challenge you faced as a personal chef?
just figuring out how to translate someone's idea of what they want, trying to get it out of them, right? Because I don't do phone calls, I don't do in-person meetings. That's a lot of, they send you an email, and I'm trying to read this email and decipher what kind of experience they want. And that's without asking them too many questions and bogging them down. Is this someone who I feel is going to want me to interact with them and be fun and entertaining? Or is this someone who's going to want a more like hands off and I'm more of the help and fade into the background? Is this someone who really appreciates good food and wants me to come to the table and explain every dish? Or is this someone who's going to want me to just swoop in and drop food and it's almost like I wasn't there, without asking so many of those questions. And a lot of that is when you get to their house and just the first few interactions you have with the person in person and realize, oh, okay, I kind of get the vibe. They're a little higher end. Like they set the table with their own candelabras and chargers. So they want a fancy thing and just kind of feeling that out, I think. And yeah, as much as you can kind of figure out without having to ask outright too many questions, I think.
To gauge the ambience once you walk in.
Yeah, and realizing that for the most part, the food isn't as important as the entertainment and hospitality part. And I think that's hard for a lot of chefs, myself included. Like, I think when you start out, you sell the fact on, I'm a chef. I've been doing this for 30 years. I went here. I have this culinary degree. I do this. Look at my interesting menus. And then realize like most of that doesn't matter as long as the food is good. Like not everyone wants to hear the story about every ingredient. Not everyone cares about you using the newest type of, winter squash. They want you to be entertained. You're in their kitchen, you're at their big island, their guests are there. Are you laughing? Are you joking with them? Are you having a good time? Are you keeping it relatively neat instead of like cluttering it with crap everywhere? Looking at that overall experience and realizing like the things that as a chef maybe are driving you crazy or you want to do are not the things that are really important for the guests. Like I said, instead of spending $40 a pound on this crazy microgreen and herb that nobody thinks about, make a dozen cookies and bring them as like a thank you gift. And those cookies probably cost you like $5 to make, if most, at most. And I think
Mhm.
something like that is going to go a lot further to say, oh, hey, and thank you. And I made cookies for everyone to take one home, as opposed to spending the extra money on some like super obscure heirloom vegetable or like fish that was flown in overnight from Peru. Like, I don't think that's as important, in my opinion.
Makes sense. So let's go back to the Airbnb and VRBO, right? So
Yep.
how does it work? Like whenever somebody books their Airbnb, they get a welcome packet, and as part of that, do you have the details? Like how does it work? Like can you
So
expand on that?
you have to work directly with the owners and operators because Airbnb doesn't let you work with them directly. I know there's something called Airbnb Experience, and that's not what I'm talking about. What I realized was where people were hiring me directly. You and your wife book a cabin, and then nobody told you anything about me or anyone, and you were just like, hey, it would be great to have a chef, and you Google and find me. So after this happened a couple times, I realized I need to cut out the middleman, being the customer, and go right to the source. So, when I started going to houses, I'd say to the client, hey, do you have the contact info for the owner? I would love to let them know that I was here and cooked. And also, if you had a great time, would you mind passing that along? Quite often you're in the house, they have like a QR code on like a cork board in the kitchen and you scan it for all their info. Great way. Find their email address, their phone number, whatever it is. Places love free advertising, right? So I'm doing a beautiful dinner in their gorgeous farmhouse. I'm taking videos, with my clients. Hey, do you guys mind if I shoot some video and share it on my social media? Take some videos. If you can find that place on social media and tag them, how great is that? So now, this house where their content is all quite often it's boring. You look at them and they're just photos of the rooms and whatever. But now here I am shooting a video saying like, oh, did this great dinner at, this such and such place in Harper's Ferry and tag the business. Then they maybe share it. And then they'll usually reach out via, DM if they're on, say, Instagram and say, oh, hey, I saw you were at the house. And that's where you can kind of have a conversation, say, yeah, here's what I do. I would love if you could recommend me to your guests. So I put together like a 6 slide PDF pitch deck kind of thing. It's got my bio, what the service is, a sample menu, testimonials, pictures, and then links to all my socials. So I can give that to the Airbnb operators. They'll sometimes share that directly with people when they book. Some of them put it on their website. But partnerships is how that works. Uh, and there's a guy I work with. He's a property management company, and he works with like 20 properties in the area. So having someone like that, if he's got 20 houses and they're booking all the time, that's someone I want to get with. And it might mean that you give them percentage. Nobody's asked me that, but I wouldn't be above. Like, listen, if someone could keep me full-time employed, I would kick them 5, 10, 15, whatever. We could work out a number if I do a dinner, because you can just add that on anyway, right? If
Right.
you're normally, let's say, charging $100 a head for dinner, bump it up to 115 and then kick that 15 per person over to the Airbnb operator. I've done dinners for owners before and just said, hey, listen, I understand you don't know me, you've never had a dinner. I would love to come and cook a dinner for two at your house so you can see what the experience is like. And if that makes them more comfortable with recommending your services, it's time and money well spent for you to go do that.
Yeah, partnerships and little kickbacks.
Anytime you can find someone to work with who's maybe not a direct competitor, although competitors, like part of Chefs Without Restaurants, the community was having a referral network. So that was, listen, there's only one of me. I'm booked this week on Friday. So if you were to call me today and say you wanted a dinner on Friday, I'm not available, but listen, I know these people. Why don't you reach out to Catrice and give the phone number and an email of another personal chef in Frederick who can maybe help you out, and hopefully she'll send business my way. And building a network big enough where we could keep giving referrals around so that every time a customer somewhere in the country needs a dinner, we can find a chef who can fill that need for them and put more money back in our pockets.
Sure. Let's see. So I know this industry has been expanding, right? Like, do you see a lot of competition in there?
Harder to get in now. It's like podcasting. In 2019, there weren't as many. In 2012, there definitely weren't any. And now everyone has one. But if you look at podcasts, the average they say is most people release 10 episodes and then stop. And I see the same thing with personal chef. I've seen a lot of people who are in a restaurant and they left the restaurant, whether the restaurant closed or they quit on their own and they started a business and they start a new social media account. They got the Instagram, the Facebook, whatever. And 3 months later, they say, hey, I took a job as a chef at such and such restaurant. It's like, yeah, because this is really hard. And if you came from a restaurant where you were making, let's just say 50, $60,000 a year, you're not going to be making that your first year. Like it's hard to if you're used to a certain lifestyle and a certain income to like magically overnight hit that. I mean, I've been doing this for 14 years and it's taken a while to hit my stride and figure some things out. And I think people underestimate how hard it actually is.
Yeah, yeah. Small business, especially in the first few years, is definitely hard, and it definitely needs some time to get to that scale where you can sustain your lifestyle, right?
Yes. And you might have to cut back on some of those things. You just have to decide.
Exactly, yeah. And funny you said that 10 videos, right? So I was reading somewhere where it says to be on the top 10% of YouTube creators, you need to have at least 22 videos. So
Yeah.
that means if you make more than 22 videos on YouTube, that means you're the top 10%. So
Yep.
that clearly tells that.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, because all that stuff is hard. And a lot of people hear that people are doing it or see them doing it and they try and they're like, oh, this is a lot more than I thought it was going to be. Sure is.
Right. What advice would you give someone starting a similar small business?
Well, I think going back to what I said before is if you can do it on the side, do that. Give yourself a little runway because, the nice thing is then I think branding is important. I think it's important to find your ideal customer. Don't try and be everything to everyone. But if you need money, you're more inclined to do that, right? Going back to that the guy who quits the restaurant or whatever, if I need to make money tomorrow, it's like, sure, I'll do a breakfast. Sure, I'll do your luncheon. Sure, I'll do a drop off. Yes, I'll do this buffet for $35 a head and a special dinner for $150 a head. And I'm going to do all this because you need the work and you need the money. I was doing this on the side. It didn't matter if I didn't work one job at all because I had a full-time job and then I'd wait and this is the perfect one. Cool. I love this. I'm going to do this dinner. An offer comes in the next week. Nope, that's not what I do. Move on. And then you can kind of build your brand and, find your place in the market and say, I'm the guy who only does dinners. They're all going to be plated and served, multi-course. They're going to be a finer dining experience. And that's what I do. And if someone wants me to come do, a scrambled egg muffin drop off breakfast, I don't do that. And just that's easier to do when you have income coming in again. And I think if you need all the business, you take a lot of things and then you're just like that guy who just does whatever. Like what's your brand?
So how do you measure success per month? But is there any other metric you track, like how you're progressing?
Yeah, I mean, are you talking like financial success kind of things?
Yes.
I do Excel spreadsheets. I'm a numbers cruncher guy. So I
Mhm.
have every year I have one Excel sheet, tabbed out for the months, and then it's got my client, and then it's how many people the dinner was, how much per head I got. There's a line for if they leave a tip, what city they're in, how far away they are. So then you start looking at that. So you go down the month and then you can just look at averages and you can say, oh, my average ticket per head is 150 or 175 or whatever. And I track it year over year. So at the bottom of each month, I have a running tally of where I was the past 2 years at the same date. So it's like, because what happens is you have a slow month, you have June, and wow, I only made $1,000 this month. That sucks. Like, am I going to go out of business? But then if you go back and you look, it's like every June I do $1,000. And every November I'm going to do $15,000, but I think it's near in the moment. So tracking those numbers. So it's like where I am I compared to last year. So when June was light this year, I also looked and said, oh, but I'm 20% over year to date last year. Okay, maybe I'm okay because I've made 20% more than I did at the exact same day last year. So kind of doing that thing where you're looking. And then you can look at metrics like mileage, like how far am I going on average for parties? Wow, I'm traveling a lot. Do I need to focus on more local because I'm traveling a lot? Or, oh, wow, my average party is, 8 people. I'd love for it to be 12 to 15. What's my marketing plan to do that? And again, ChatGPT is great at this. You can load all of those in. I loaded all my financials, literally every month that I've been in business since the very start and analyze it. And I give it very free leeway at first. Just what are some things that you notice that maybe I don't notice? And it pulls up crazy things, but it'll say, like, on average, your busiest month is always November. Your slowest month is always May. If your slowest month is always May, maybe you need to run some promotions, but you should be starting that in March, and it'll give you ideas like that. It's just really interesting. So I come from a big background. I've worked for IKEA, I've worked for Sodexo, big global companies that are really big into financials, KPI measurement and stuff like
Right.
that. So, and I think that gives me a business advantage as well, because a lot of these people who start businesses like this don't have that kind of, managing $1 million food budget a year. So I apply that on a smaller scale to my business just to kind of look at how many people I'm doing, how much money I'm making, that kind of thing, what profit margins are looking like.
Yeah, it's amazing how much you track and also use ChatGPT because you're almost tracking the way uh, the companies do their quarterly earnings calls.
Yes,
And they
100%.
do a trailing, the last year what they did, like last year, same quarter, like, yeah, it's amazing you're doing.
Yeah, I can pull it up right now and it's always open. I've got it at the bottom bar of my computer there and I could pull up right now and show you where I am versus last year, year to date. Right now I'm 96% of last year with, 2 days into the month. So it's like I'm only 4% behind and December's my biggest month, right? So you can spec out and see, and then you can set goals and say, I want to make, let's just say $100,000 this year. And you can have that as the goal. And every time you put in a party, it shows you how closer you're getting both percentage and dollars. Like, oh, you need to make $8,000 or you're, 3% behind or something. I love that stuff. And just it gamifies it in a mode. And you can say, man, if I want to hit that goal, like what do I need to do? And start running scenarios of like how many more parties and what's the average ticket head got to be to get to that goal.
Amazing. So where can people find you? I know you talked about it. Can you just say it for the purpose of viewers?
Sure. I mean, my personal chef business is Perfect Little Bites. That's me everywhere. If you go to perfectlittlebites.com, you'll find my website. All my information's on there, the social medias and all of that. And then Chefs Without Restaurants is my podcast and organization. And I usually direct people to chefswithoutrestaurants.org. And that links to my newest podcast episode, as well as the community and whatever interesting stuff I have going on other than that.
How can I help you?
Let's stay in contact. I'm always looking for people in, the community, finding interest work together. I just love what I do. I love helping other people. Sometimes it's just a brainstorming session and talking things through, having someone besides a computer and an algorithm to bounce ideas off of, having a real person like, hey, what works for you? What have you seen? Because I love applying things in other industries to what I do. I think it's beneficial to look outside of the food world for both creative inspiration and business inspiration.
Great. It's amazing to talk to you, Chris. Thank you.
Thanks so much for having me on the show.
Sure.